thinking about the way I was.
Coming to you from the University of Minnesota, Rochester,
Baby,
our town.
where I ended up. I'm all good already, so moved on. It's scary.
1 in 4 women in the United States is affected in some way by domestic violence, impacting in turn families, children, and communities. I'm joined today by Artcye Thomas, the Executive Director of the Women's Shelter and Support Center, who's here to talk to us about raising awareness about this issue in our community and the work of the Women's Shelter. Welcome to our town.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Nicole.
Well, you're new to town, so
Yes.
welcome to our town.
Thank you.
And I was wondering if we could just start by you talking a little bit about what called you into this work that you do now.
Sure. So I am originally from Western Pennsylvania, and I got my start at a domestic violence program in Western PA through a program called AmeriCorps. And my service site was the local domestic violence program, and there I provided on-site child care for survivors who were going through drug and alcohol treatment.
And right now, the Women's Shelter serves an 11-county area, over 3,800 clients that you have. Can you tell us a little bit about the key work that you provide?
Absolutely. So we provide very, very vital services to the community. Essentially, we are a beacon of light, in the community for a number of individuals. But mainly those services include emergency shelter, transitional housing. In addition to that, we also have permanent apartments that individuals are able to actually reside in for, of course, a period of time as long as they need to do so. And these services, as I stated, are not only vital, but for a lot of individuals, they would not have anywhere else to go. So we can literally assist that individual from, that very first point of walking into emergency shelter, very scared and not quite knowing what's going to happen, to, walking them through the steps of, kind of getting on their feet, so to speak. There's a lot, of course, that comes into play when you're talking about domestic violence. So it's not just, the physical bruises that you see. Oftentimes there's so many other layers, that we're dealing with and talking about. So thankfully we're able to, kind of take that comprehensive approach and, assist them with a little bit of everything, from A to Z while they're going through, those programs and receiving services. But in addition to, the housing, piece of this, we also have a large community outreach department. So we provide workshops and presentations and trainings in the community to any area business or organization that would request some information on domestic violence or our services. In addition to that, we do a number of support groups throughout the region as well. So in those support groups, audiences consist of youth, and young adults on up to, older individuals in the community as well. So, those are some of the key, components of our organization and program. In addition to that, we do a piece with a medical advocacy and legal advocacy piece as well. So we're able to assist folks who are going through any type of legal proceeding or involved in, a court process. We can provide on-site support services for them too.
So, as you're listing all of these things, it sounds like such a holistic approach. You're touching on so many different parts of things that are affecting these victims and these survivors' lives. Yeah. Housing is such a big part of what you provide, and there's so many staggering statistics about this, and statistics, it's really stories behind these statistics.
Yeah.
One of the ones I was really struck by was that about a third of homeless women in Minnesota are homeless in some part because of domestic violence. Can you talk a little bit about sort of the interface between the homelessness?
Absolutely.
And housing?
Sure. There's obviously so much intersectionality, between the two. And oftentimes there, of course, is economic or financial abuse that is going on as well. And, sometimes as a result, of course, of, the physical abuse, financial and economic abuse, it leads to homelessness. Or oftentimes, of course, individuals are fleeing violence, and as a result, they're left homeless. Unfortunately, and I kind of mentioned this a little bit earlier, there are not enough beds to go around, and that's just not here in Minnesota, it's nationally. It really is an epidemic. We are plagued oftentimes with having to really be creative, and work with other organizations throughout the state to try to get someone safely housed who is fleeing domestic violence, because what we don't ever want to happen is for someone to be homeless as a result of domestic violence. That is what we're here for. Our pie in the sky, of course, is to, kind of build and, and add, beds and have the capacity to be able to serve so many more victims so we don't have to worry about those things. But right now we are doing, I think we're doing pretty well with what we have, the resources, that we have available. Yeah.
And you mentioned maybe some of the things that are sort of pie in the sky. Can you talk a little bit about that future vision that you're thinking about as you take on this role?
Oh, sure, absolutely. So, well, I'd have to say ultimately, and this kind of sounds probably, like a lofty goal, but ultimately, I always say my goal is to work myself out of a job. My ultimate goal would be, be that there wouldn't be a need, for additional bedding, for victims and survivors. But I think we both know that's probably not going to happen in our lifetime. But nevertheless, yes, we are operating at capacity, and it's not just ourselves. There's a number of shelters, who are operating at capacity as well. And, oftentimes we are full. And we cannot accept anyone else. So that is, absolutely my goal, to expand, to add more beds, to have the capacity to add more programs, to spread more awareness, about domestic violence, and hire, more staff, absolutely.
So many wonderful things to talk about. We're wrapping up our time here, but I wanted to make sure that we talked a little bit about how people could connect, and also, there is sort of this idea of the tale of two Rochesters. How can the awareness of the community be raised around this issue?
Sure. So folks can reach out to us via our Facebook page as well as our website, www.womens-shelter.org, and there is a tab just for anyone who's interested in volunteering. We're always looking for volunteers with special projects, with day-to-day operations. Any way that someone would like to become involved in our program, they're able to do so. So yeah, reach out to us. We certainly would love to connect with you.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Artcye, and thank you for your work.
Thank you. Thank you.
Our Town is brought to you in part by the following amazing people and organizations:
the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund, and the citizens of Minnesota.
And the members of KSMQ Public Television. Thank you.
Be sure to stick around. We have more great stories coming your way next. We chased some delicious food over at the Winter Farmers Market with Danielle Teal, and we get you ready to cast your ballots for the 2020 elections with City Clerk Anissa Hollingshead. But up first, we take a little break from the cold, and we spend some quality time over at the Rochester Public Library with the Cribbage Club in this week's Our Culture segment.
We're having our Cribbage Club here at the library, which meets on the second Sunday of the month at 2:30. The club started about 9 months ago. We had a father and a son who were interested in coming in and wanting to play with others other than just the two of them and playing within their family, and so they came up with the idea of having a club here at the library where they would meet other people who like to play the same game they do. The two ladies I played with today had never played before.
Because I had a doozy. I have a doozy. I like mine. Okay.
Anybody can come to play, whether you've never played before or if you've been playing your entire life. It certainly has grown. The first few meetings there was maybe 4 to 5 people, but now we're getting anywhere from 10 to 15 people when we meet on a monthly basis. They get some engagement with other people within the community. They meet new people that they would not have met before. They also get to learn something that they may not have known before. Many of the people who come to the club are coming to learn how to play the game. They've heard about the game but never actually played it as a child or as an adult, and they just want to learn. I learned how to play when I was in elementary school. Actually, one Christmas, all of my 7 siblings, we each got a cribbage board for Christmas one year, and so then we spent the entire Christmas holiday from school just playing each other. I help coordinate the event, make sure everybody has the cards and the boards and the instructions and a place to play the game, and library staff will get them started. It's fun to learn about people and their personalities, what they think their personality is, and then how that personality might change a bit once you've starting being a little competitive with somebody.
No, 26, 29, 31. Thank you, thank you.
We have lots of people who are retired, but we also have people who are still working. They're just looking for something to do on a Sunday afternoon in the middle of Minnesota winter. It's a good time to just be with other people. I've met more than a few people that they're living alone. They don't have a lot of connections with other people. You know, their life is centered around just being alone, and so this is an opportunity to meet somebody else. That's one of our goals, is to engage people on different levels, on individual one-to-one levels, but also to engage people as a community, to welcome them and be welcoming. The most dramatic thing is probably when somebody makes more than 20 points. That would be in a hand, because the maximum is 29. And so I think that would be the most exciting thing that could probably happen, is if somebody hit the record 29.
Yeah. Oh, don't stop yet. 12. Oh my God.
To find out when our schedule is, you can go to the Rochester's Library's website, which is rplmn.org, and go to our calendar of events, and you can find out about the Cribbage Club. Or you could call our Fiction, Movies, and Music desk at 507-328-2305. We're just going to continue. And if people find that they want to engage more, maybe we'll have this event more than once a month. Maybe make it every 2 weeks on a Sunday afternoon. We'll see.
For more information about this story and other Our Town features, connect with us on Facebook, Twitter at KSMQ #OurTown, or ksmq.org/OurTown.
It's beating loud. Won't let no bad blood ever bring us down. Keep flying higher. Fight like a fighter. What if I'm...
The handsome Hale Ashcroft, volatile star of the 1953 soap opera These Intertwining Lives, is late for the shoot. His dressing room door is locked from within, and he's not answering the knock. Where is the star of the show? On Friday, February 1st, spend the evening at the Plummer House, nibbling tasty treats and sampling wine while you ferret out the mystery. The event raises money for Rochester's Elder Network. Tickets and information available at elder-network.org. And want to try out a new routine with your Contact Improv partner? Want to do your best Bob Barker impression? Or you want to tell a story about the one who got away? Yeah, you do. The Rochester Art Center is hosting Open Mic, a relaxed, safe space of expression for performers of various stripes. The Rack Mic is open to performance artists, dancers, poets, comedians, storytellers, actors, and musicians. Emerging and advanced performers are welcomed. Suggested age is 16 plus, and tea and hot chocolate are available, and probably a plus. Details at rochesterartcenter.org. February 6th and 8th, downtown Rochester transforms into an icy oasis for social ice. Unique themed ice bars, each with its own signature drink, and full-scale ice sculptures illuminated with vibrant hues light up the winter drab's night. Keep your blood pumping with nightly live DJ entertainment. Can you believe this is the 10th year already? This oh-so-nice cold weather event is free to attend and open to the public. Details at downtownrochestermn.com. And driverless vehicles are in the works for Rochester. The city has signed a pilot agreement with MnDOT to safely operate an automated shuttle for 12 months to gather lessons learned for automated vehicle operations in all weather conditions, educate the public on the benefits of AV technologies, and provide an innovative and enhanced transit service to the citizens of Rochester. A specific start date has not yet been announced, so please stay tuned. And stay with us for more Our Town. Coming up next, we enjoy some fresh food in the middle of winter in this week's Walkabout segment.
This is Danielle Teal with Our Town Walkabout, and we are at the Farmers Winter Market. Super excited to see what's available, and wouldn't you know, it's actually really warm in here. So I'll admit, I don't eat a lot of greens. However, I did try Dean's stuff over here, and it was incredible.
So we're growing microgreens, and what microgreens are, they're the first week's growth of edible vegetables. What these are, they're 40% more nutritious than the full green. These are actually pea shoots from the sugar snap pea.
So I'm gonna try one. Here we go. It's actually pretty good. I would give this to my kid. What is your booth called?
Yeah, we're in Fusion Foods. We specialize in vegetarian, vegan, gluten-free.
What is your favorite protein? Is it beef or chicken?
I love chicken.
So you could take your chicken and simmer with our sauce for about 20 minutes.
It sounds delicious. Can I try some?
Yeah,
Absolutely. Perfect.
Sweet.
That is delicious. I am down for this.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. That's outstanding. Thank you. All right, we're here with Jess. She is the food market manager.
That's right.
And we got some produce in the background, which is phenomenal for a winter market.
So the people that you talk to here, the food that you're going to buy, that was all grown within 50 miles of Rochester, Minnesota. So it's regional, and there are true farmers selling you that product. The winter market goes on every other week from January through April. That's an opportunity with the farmers market, is that it's a whole experience. So you can load the family up and come out and see the food out on the tables and talk to the people that grew it and taste it right away.
Okay, this is really cool. They got cheese here too. Hot pepper, Monterey Jack cheese. Man, I'm gonna need to get me some of this. This is Danielle Teal with Artcye Walkabout, and I'm going to continue walking around and checking out the booths at the Farmers Winter Market.
I'm all good already, so moved on, it's scary. I'm not where you left me at all.
As you know, 2020 is a big election year, and we are joined today by City Clerk Anissa Hollingshead, who's here to talk to us about the elections and how we can get ready. Welcome to our town.
Thank you.
So I have to confess, I'm a bit of a elections geek. I was one of those people that was more excited about registering to vote than getting my driver's license. So to get us kind of started from one, I guess, election geek to another, how do elections sort of form the basis for engagement across the city?
Yes, absolutely. So in the city clerk's office, we talk about our primary mission being to help people connect with and impact their local government. And that really starts with the cornerstone of electing our local officials. So starting with the presidential process, it's an exciting thing this year to have that presidential primary and to have the opportunity for more voters to engage in that, because we often hear from voters who get involved in November and say, how did these people end up on the ballot? This is how.
So Minnesota is actually hosting the very first presidential primary since 1992, so it's kind of a bigger deal in recent times. What can we expect, and how can voters prepare for that?
Absolutely. So a presidential primary is something used in several states. Several states use the caucus process. Minnesota has typically used the caucus process, but as you said, we'll be trying the primary again this year for the 5th time in our state's history, but first since '92. And for our voters, what that means is that opportunity to participate in how the parties select their candidates. So that's really an important distinction for voters to be aware of, is this is really a party process. It's being administered by election officials so that it is open to everyone to the greatest extent possible. We have the advantages of the early absentee voting period. We have the full election day from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. at all of our regular polling locations. So it's much easier for voters to participate. It'll look and feel like a regular election, but it is a party primary, and so voters need to be prepared for some of those differences that way.
Sure. So to talk a little bit about that, so it is a party process, and so does that mean that people have to disclose their party affiliation in some way?
Yes.
Okay.
So people do not have to be a member of a political party in choosing to vote for one of the party's primaries doesn't make them a member, but they do have to state just a general agreement with the principles of the party. They will be asked to select which ballot they want to receive on the primary day or when they go to vote. And so that is a different thing for our Minnesota voters.
Right. And so for some of those voters out there that may be listening and watching, there are some concerns about privacy. Can you respond a little bit to that?
So because typically in Minnesota, which party you choose to vote for or affiliate with is not something that you're ever publicly asked usually. Right. That is a different thing for us. And so our voters need to know that we're asking for that information, how it's going to be used, and who's going to have access to it. Basically, election administrators need to have access to that party choice information so we can get you the right ballot. The party officials after the primary will get information about who voted and which ballots the voters selected. The party officials will not know which candidates you voted for or anything else, but they will know your party choice. Okay. So voters just need to be aware that that information will be available in limited circumstances.
And so as part of this process, and we'll have some dates here. So obviously it'll be March 3rd. That'll be the primary election date.
Yes.
And then are you still looking for election judges for that particular primary?
We are.
Okay.
We are having all 52 of our precincts in Rochester, and all of the precincts throughout Olmsted County will be open and operating that day. And we want to make sure that we have plenty of election judges there to help our voters, and that we are providing excellent service to our voters. Voters may have questions, particularly about having to request a specific party's ballot, and we want to make sure that there are judges there that are prepared to help with that. So we are staffing at levels pretty close to a November general election for this, and so we need help with that. Some of our regular election judges are snowbirds who are still out of town on March 3rd, so that kind of adds to where we're at right now. So we strongly encourage people who are interested. It's a great way to connect with your community, help your friends and neighbors cast their ballots, and you can be paid for your service too.
Fantastic. Are there other dates we should be keeping in mind as we're kind of thinking about the election year?
Yes, absolutely. So we have 3 election events this year. So for election geeks like you and I, that's what makes it a
it's
good
on my
year.
refrigerator.
Right? We start with the presidential nomination primary on March 3rd. We have our regular primary still on August 11th, and that will be for our state and local offices. We have 3 city council races on the ballot this year, as well as a council president at the city. Some of our county commissioner seats are up in Olmsted County, and so any of those contests that end up having more than 2 candidates will go to that primary in August, and then everyone shows up for November in that November 3rd general election.
Fantastic. I know when there's these big sort of the presidential election years, there's so much focus on that. Can you talk a little bit about just the importance of us making sure we're, prepared and ready for our local elections as well?
Absolutely. So it actually starts with candidates, and so that's always a good reminder for people too, that the candidate filing period for those local offices will come in May. So if there are people at home who are thinking about, hey, I could be a city council member or a county commissioner, you have your chance, and that's the way to get started that way. And then for our voters to really have that opportunity to have your voice heard and impact local elections. Our lowest turnout elections are typically our primaries, and so that's when really a lot of those critical decisions are getting made about who you're going to see in November. So.
Fantastic. And I have heard, I guess through the grapevine, that technology is going to be used to assist. Can you talk a little bit more about what that's going to look like?
Right. So we will be having poll pads in all of our voting locations throughout Olmsted County. They've been used in some of the township elections up to this point, and then in some of the special elections last November. So Rochester voters who had come out to vote in the school board or the school referendum question last November may have seen the poll pads in their polling locations. They will be in all of the locations this fall, or in this fall and summer and winter.
So throughout the year. Fantastic.
Yes.
Good.
And that will help voters with getting checked in. All of the registration can happen right on those poll pads. It does help to streamline those processes.
So this is a pretty meaty, I guess, question. We only have a few seconds here, or a few minutes here, but this year marks the 100th year since the 19th Amendment, giving women the right to vote, 150 years since African Americans were given the right to vote, and then we're sort of having these conversations at the national level, sort of about elections and the democratic process and voter rights. Can you talk a little bit about how the city is addressing, accessibility and ensuring that this process is as democratic as possible?
Absolutely. That's been a big component of our election judge training. We've worked jointly with Olmsted County in developing the training for this year and making sure that we're really enforcing with our judges what our expectations are for working with voters, and that our judges are in the polling location to help every eligible voter cast a ballot. And that's our responsibility. In Minnesota, we're very fortunate that we have a network of laws that really have helped protect access to voting throughout the years. So as we've seen across the country, especially since the 2013 Supreme Court decision in Shelby v. Holder that's kind of restricted some of the application of the Voting Rights Act, we've been protected from that more in Minnesota because of our laws. We have that same-day registration that we've had for over 40 years. We have the opportunity for voters to really be able to cast the ballots under multiple methodologies and opportunities that really expand that and help protect that. And we want to make sure that our election judges are very well versed in what those requirements are, We don't have a photo ID requirement in Minnesota when you go to vote. If you're already registered, you don't need to show a photo ID, and it's very important that our judges all understand and follow that as well, and that we're protecting the rights that are in place for us.
Fantastic. So what would you want people to make sure that they know about getting ready to vote this year?
Right. So I think the most important thing for people to remember is it's easy. We can talk all day about the nuances and the different intricacies of voting, but at its core, it's as simple as making sure that you're registered, learning about what's on your ballot, and making a plan for showing up and voting. And you've got lots of options for that voting. You can do that in your polling place on Election Day. During the 46 days before Election Day, you can vote by mail. You can vote early in-person absentee at the 4-H building for the March 3rd presidential primary. That's happening right now, Monday through Friday. And the last 7 days before each election, there will be even more options for in-person voting. So we're trying to make it as accessible and easy as possible for people to be able to cast their ballot, and really encourage people to take advantage of those resources.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us today. As Anissa said, it's easy to vote, so make sure you have all that information and take a listen to all that we've talked about in this segment. We will see you next week. This is all for us now from the University of Minnesota, Rochester. This is Our Town, the show about Rochester.